Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. A very special welcome to our Special Secretary Logistics, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Pawan Kumar Agarwalji. I've had a personal privilege of working with him in many different roles in the past that he has been in, and it's great to see you this afternoon once again, sir. Thank you for joining in. Colleagues from JSW, E.T. Karni, and Mr. Vineet Agarwal, who is the Senior Vice President of ASSOCHAM. A very warm welcome to all of you. A very warm welcome to all the delegates who have joined, large, small, and medium industry, who is part of this, the media. Thank you, all of you, for joining. I think I cannot but emphasize the role of logistics and the importance that it plays as we go forward into the world that is. I think the whole piece has become so significant that ease of doing business when we started in India was about procedural matters, and we were nowhere in reckoning at a point when we started this many years back. And Pawanji would remember this journey because he himself was quite attached with this when he was handling the skill part of it and then the food part of it as well. So the whole piece is so important today that logistics is the most important cornerstone of this whole piece. I think it's just not the ease of doing business, which is procedural, but it is also about the cost of doing business and which is going to attract investments as we talk about. I'll just talk about some rankings that India has been able to achieve. We are ranked 44 in the index, World Bank Index, since 2018. That's a number. Today, this year, we feel we would be about 215 to 220 $1 billion worth of industry in India. I'm sure COVID will have some impact on it, but I personally feel we'll have a positive impact and not a negative impact as we go forward and as we equalize this year. I think this sector was given the status of infrastructure when it was about $160 billion, and that's about 3 years back, 2017. So the growth has been big, but can it be bigger? Definitely yes, and definitely much more. The reasons why one has to look at as to why these investments have been made in the logistics sector, and specialized companies like Vineetji, yours, and many others, and companies like JSW who move material both way, inward and outward, because that's their core business. And I think the most important thing is when we initiated the process of GST, we broke down the taxation borders within this country, and I think warehousing and logistics got a very big boost because of that. Government's continued effort to ensure that we build industrial corridors or we have these clusters that are being developed across the country. I think that would be a very important factor also for this industry to grow. And obviously the thrust on manufacturing. And last but not the least, I think all of us are consumers, and with half of the earth that becomes China and India, I think India plays a very significant role in the market that we are, and therefore it's what it is. And I would also, when I say the manufacturing piece, I'm just going to leave a thought with China Plus One, and I'm going to come and talk about it a little later as I do speak as I go forward. I think the sector has seen a large chunk of investment, which is about $6.5 to $7 billion already in the last 3 years. But are we happy with that? No, I think there's much more headroom for this to happen around your leadership, sir. I'm sure we're going to see much more happening in this, more actively in this space. Cost of doing business is something very important, and I think, you know, as a layman, as an individual, I just start wondering, the cost of a driver in India is the cheapest, the truck efficiency is the highest. I think we have fairly good roads where connectivity is fine. So why is the cost of logistics high? And I'm sure all of us keep thinking about this. And when I look at numbers, it kind of says that it is 13 to 15 or 18% of the GDP is spent on logistics in this country, whereas the world average is half. So very clearly that makes us non-competitive when we talk about going into exports. And there are many other factors in the economic chain, which is cost of doing business, not only the logistics piece, but this plays a very significant role. And therefore, when one does look out, so one does get a feeling that, you know, efficient intermodal and multimodal transport systems are amiss in the country, and therefore how collaboratively the state governments, the central governments, the industry put together develops infrastructure so that this negativity that is within the system of lack of infrastructure is kind of taken care of. And I will talk about a few things more, and I think COVID has kind of opened eyes for us. This is a black swan event, and every sector, everybody is now looking at how logistics can be maintained, how inventory management can be done, how close this can be brought, connectivity to its customers, to its supply chain from the value chains across the globe are dealt with. And I'm going to touch upon China Plus One with a little more data. We do talk about 60% of the world manufacturing, 60% of the world population is China, 30% of that is manufactured by, by the 60% of the people. And with this China Plus One, de-risking of the global model, one does see about 10% manufacturing moving away from China to the rest of the world. And when I look at that number, it's a sizable chunk of number. And if we take the third of that number, and I'm not going to get into the manufacturing piece, there's another set of people who are really working very hard to ensure that we can get this section in. But what I'm trying to develop on here is you're talking about $3 trillion of manufacturing of various kinds to come to India, which possibly can be tapped by this country. And therefore, logistics as an industry will have to play a very, very significant role, because should it not be viable, you will miss this opportunity, and we will not be as effective as we could and would be. And therefore, logistics and the policy that you're working on, sir, I think needs to factor in a lot of these current and the future expansions that are coming through. And therefore, with these few things, I would close by saying that, as we move towards Atmanirbharta of manufacturing of goods for India, competitively produced within India for the world, I think it is time for this sector to really look at scaling up operations, which will bring in efficiencies, which needs to be technology driven. Therefore, one is talking about how this sector can actually deliver the goal of the cost of doing business brought down for the industry, and more manufacturing and more viable consumption happens from India. With these words, thank you so much. I just wanted to start the talk, and I thought there will be a lot of nuances and in-depth discussion happening during the talks of various speakers. So with this, I will invite Vineet ji. Vineet Agarwal ji, please, over to you for your industry perspective, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak ji, and a warm welcome to Shri Pawan Kumar Agarwal ji. So the remit of this National Logistics Committee has been that how can we look at very simple things and how we can bring about those changes that are in some ways quick wins, but also things that are more practical in nature, rather than making very large statements.
So may I request you to put off your camera and then speak, please.
Sorry about that. So what the remit of this particular council at ASSOCHAM has been that how can we ensure that we are continuously looking at changes, but not talking about very large changes, but small incremental changes that can certainly help the sector to improve. And the two subjects that we really took were policy and regulatory issues, and the second was how to make the sector more attractive. We deliberated a lot of things in the past, and we've come out with some ideas, but of course with COVID a lot of things got disrupted, and we have reactivated this whole initiative. There was a lot of discussion, and we came up to ideas, things like can there be some design innovation, can something like a RDSO etc should be set up to ensure that, for example, trucks are of the same size, wagons are of the same size, and so on and so forth. How can we ensure certain standardization? Can we do a design innovation based on India-centric needs versus things that are global-centric? How do we ensure that statewide versus national policies related to things like warehousing are common in nature? Because there are companies, let's say some of these e-commerce companies who are there, they want a national policy. They don't want to go to every state and see, acha, I need to get this clearance, that clearance. This is the norm there. This is the norm in a different state. That's where it creates a lot of not just extra cost, but also creates inefficiency in the system. Things like, why do we need permits for anything in the digital age? Can we do without things like that? So, and of course, one major important thing was containerization of cargo. We all know that containerization is very, very poor in India. And can this help certainly in terms of not just standardization, but ultimately bringing the cost of logistics down? The second task force looked at how to make sector attractive. And one of the things that we came out was, why don't we celebrate the supply chain and logistics practitioners in the country with a national logistics day? Countries like Germany and others have this, and if we are able to create something like this, it not just validates the strong work that is happening around logistics and supply chain, but also recognizes all the frontline workers, even during the, not just at this COVID time, but generally at all times. It also makes the sector very attractive. It gets people to come and join the sector and even make it more robust. And ultimately, as we have seen during this pandemic, that supply chains and logistics has become a boardroom subject. And to continue this process, a national logistics day would definitely create a huge impetus. And sir, you've also created this India logistics, even the logo, etc. It's clearly fitting into the larger scheme of things of how to make logistics a very attractive sector. So I would not talk much more on this, and we'd love to hear from you. Before I ask Shri Pavanji to speak, like to just quickly introduce him. He is from the IS office of West Bengal cadre of 1985, and he's been in very many various senior government positions, as Deepak ji said, where he's interacted with him in as Secretary, Ministry of Consumer Affairs. He's also the CEO of FSSAI, as well as the Joint Secretary with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. He's has a very diversified personality, and also has huge amount of experiences. So I think we would all be very fortunate to listen and learn from him. So, sir, without any further ado, we request you for your speech.
Thank you, Vineet. Thank you, Mr. Deepak Sood, Mr. Rath, and Mr. Sinha. For adjusting the time. I'm so sorry that you had to do it at the last moment. And what Vineet said was, music to my ears, that, changes in a complex system like logistics will only happen if we are able to make minor tweaks here and there, because I don't know if some of you have heard that Peter Drucker had said that the last frontier of management to conquer is the logistics and supply chain management. And when I heard it for the first time, I thought that why should Peter Drucker be talking about supply chain management and logistics and call it as the last frontier of management? But having been 6 months into this job, I now realize that how complex it is. How complex it is because it is first of all very loosely defined. What this logistics encompasses is not really, if you ask 5 people and 5 people will give you different perspectives, the way they look at it. And if you cannot define it, if you cannot also identify the areas of improvement, how do you go about improving those areas? Talking in terms of logistic cost is only half the story, because it is quite obvious that the logistic cost for a country or for any geography will depend on the kind of goods that you are transporting. The nature of geography in which you transport those goods. So it depends on these two and many other factors, that any comparison across geographies, across nations on cost of logistics is meaningless, quite meaningless. It does not mean that we are doing very well. I'm sure there should be scope for improvement in each area. For instance, we recently concluded a study on logistic cost by sectors and logistic rating by sectors, and it is quite obvious that electronics and IT sectors would fare very well compared to maybe apparel sector, or compared to the agri sector, because there is hardly any logistics or any movement of goods that is happening in those sectors, or even if it is happening, it is a high value or low volume goods being transported. So I think rather than talking about and fixing our attention to macro issues, we need to get into details of what can possibly be done. I'll give you an example. Just this morning, I had visitors, from Association of Rice Exporters of India, non-basmati rice. And many of you may be aware that non-basmati rice is third biggest item of export from India. First being basmati rice, and second is the beef. So if it is the third largest export item from India, then how do we fare as far as logistics of export of non-basmati rice is concerned? And the association was at pains to explain to me that how in India the logistic cost for exporting rice, or the logistic cost for non-basmati rice is about 14% compared to our competition nation, which is Vietnam and Thailand, where it is 5 to 7%. And it all boils down to that if we want to compete with these countries, how do we bridge this gap of 7%? How do we, what will, even if our production is as efficient as in Thailand and Vietnam, somebody has to take care of this 7%. And then I was told that rice was not included in the MIES scheme. It is also not likely to be included in a scheme that is going to replace, the MIES scheme, which is a remission of duties and taxes, because the volumes and amount required is so large that all the money will go into this only. So I was just wondering that as a nation, as a government policy, we have to basically decide that if our rice exports become non-competitive because of logistic cost, and just because they have to be transported over longer distances in India. And you are right in many ways that in several areas, our transportation by road must be comparable to that in Thailand and Vietnam, at least as far as the cost of staff is concerned. Drivers must be as expensive or as inexpensive as these two countries. Fuel cost, I do not have an idea. So we have to go into details that where does the extra cost come in and what can be done to address those costs. One of the costs we found, and they showed me a video, that much of the rice is exported from Kakinada, Anchorage port. So there they showed me the video, and by looking at the video, it became quite clear that the operations there are as primitive as they were perhaps 20 years ago. So that is under the state government, and no investment has gone into that facility to mechanize it, to handle large volumes of cargo. So I think these are some areas where we have to look into that, what specific intervention can be made to address some of the issues that Mr. Sood had eloquently pointed out as, how Indian goods can become more competitive in the international market. So I was just giving you an example of one particular commodity and one particular intervention that we can perhaps think in terms of making. But overall, the sector appears to be very, very complex, and unless we get down to details and go down to specific commodities, specific geographies, specific modes of transport, specific concerns, we may just be wondering without achieving very much. And this is precisely what we have been doing over the past 5-6 months. As you may be aware that the department, the government is working towards crafting a national logistics policy. We had several rounds of discussions with many of you, and our attempt has been to zero down to specific areas of intervention rather than making some very general statement and not being able to do anything about it. So we wish to create a plan that is implementable. Creating a plan which talks about nice things without anything being implemented from that plan or that policy would be absolutely meaningless. And what we have done is that under the plan identified 12 areas of 12 levers of change that we would focus on. First lever of change is around, I think what Vineet mentioned, regulatory and policy coherence. And the policy itself will bring all of us on the same page. And next is regulatory coherence, which a new logistics law that we are in the process of putting together will bring in. A new logistics law, a national logistics law, will bring in that kind of a policy coherence across modes of transport, and will not only be a transaction law, but define various entities and their role and the coordination mechanism between different agencies. That is going to be of paramount importance as we move forward, because multiple agencies and multiple entities are involved in that. And within that, the role of the state governments and how similar kind of coherence can be brought about at the state level is extremely important, because many of the issues in logistics are issues of the state governments, are issues at the local level. And I think enthusing them that this is a sector that requires special attention. It is not a sector that you can say as an ancillary to manufacturing, ancillary to agriculture. It is a sector in itself that requires special focus and attention. That is what I think the national government has understood and therefore created the logistics division. And the states will have to understand and bring focus on the issues of logistics, in which, as far as the states are concerned, warehousing is going to be an important issue. When we are, in fact, even planning for industrial clusters and industrial hubs, we often forget about warehousing. And warehousing is such an important area of intervention in logistics that unless that is taken care of, we'll not be able to move forward. In terms of coordination at the national level, I think perhaps the most important coordination is across transport ministries, the 4 key transport ministries, and connecting whatever infrastructure is going to get built up over the next years, is done in a coordinated manner through a national master plan of sorts. And that is what is the next thrust area. Standardization, which Vineet mentioned, and I think standardization, unitization of cargo holds so much of potential to bring in efficiency that perhaps is not very well understood even by people in industry and in the logistics sector. I think a big push has to be there, and I'm myself beginning to understand some of these things, and I would like ASSOCHAM to take the lead to basically hold master classes for professionals from industry at different levels, so that the whole concept of unitization of cargo and standardization is brought home to them, because that will basically open avenues for increasing efficiencies to a large extent. Simplification and streamlining of processes. When we looked at different modes of transport and different documents that are used, I think it is mind-boggling. Found we have done some detailed exercises on that. We found there is so much of scope of standardization of terminology, standardization of documents, standardization of processes, particularly in port operations, that will make life for all of us so much easy than what it is today. So a big scope for simplification and streamlining of processes, standardization of documentation. Digital transformation is the sixth area and sixth lever of change that we are thinking of. Here again, I think we have been toying with the idea of a national logistics portal. We wanted to then call it a platform rather than a portal. And now we are realizing that most government departments have been working on their computerization, a digitization efforts for many, many years. And logistics division is starting something on its own will have a challenge of getting buy-in of these ministries and departments and agencies. And therefore, we have revisited our strategy of merely integrating what has already happened and not reinvent the wheel. And our effort on digitization is to identify areas, the gap areas where the digitization efforts have not happened, and take care of those gap areas, and then integrate all these existing and new IT solutions onto a single platform through API interface, so that we can get quick results without much loss of time. And it'll be acceptable to all government agencies. As logistics division, by ourselves we are nothing. We have to work with other ministries and departments, and we have to get their buy-in. So that is very, very important in doing so. The next area of attention is multimodality. And in this area, as I think once again Vineet mentioned, perhaps, it is very closely connected with containerization. While multimodal transport for EXIM cargo is fairly widely used, the containers are widely used, but on domestic cargo, I think it is rarely used. So there is a huge scope for containerization and promoting multimodal transportation in the domestic cargo movement. And that is where we need to standardize the infrastructure, which has come up in by different names: ICDs, CFS, AFTs, so PFTs. There are different names under which all these infrastructures come up by different ministries, and much of it has come up with private participation. Can we have consolidated guidelines for such infrastructure to come up in future? Should we also have exclusivity for such infrastructure, so that I am told that in many areas such infrastructure has come up, but it is not viable. And in order to ensure when such investments are made, and it is viable, can we give them some exclusive rights for certain number of years until there is enough business for that particular facility to come in? A new class of infrastructure, perhaps, where cargo aggregation and consolidation can take place, and disaggregation can take place, in the form of multimodal logistic park, is perhaps needed. But they will have to be, we have to think in terms of what is the nature of this animal that we are talking about, multimodal logistic park, because this is currently being very loosely used. And even though there have been aspirations of both the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and Ministry of Railways and CONCOR to establish such MMLPs, but I believe the first one has just got inaugurated. So I think a lot more work is required in terms of defining this class of infrastructure, and how do we make it happen at a much larger scale. Warehousing, we have spoken about standardization in warehousing, use of automation, mechanization in warehousing is an important area of intervention. What logistics infrastructure is needed for export and import, for exim cargo, particularly in terms of port infrastructures? That is an area in logistics that require attention. Professionalization or human resources in logistics, the logistics workforce at all levels, starting from the drivers, loaders, unloaders, right up to the top management on logistic companies. So what kind of professional development is needed? How do we make it happen? How do we ensure that the operating environment, particularly at the low end of our logistic workers, improves? How do we improve the working conditions of our drivers, loaders, unloaders? These are areas of intention. Green and clean logistics is another area of attention. And finally, how do we ensure that all this happens in a coordinated manner? These coordination arrangements have to be institutionalized. They have some kind of committees, etc., have already been formed and they are working currently. But how do we bring in a more robust structure for coordination at the national level, at the state level, and also between state and the center? These are areas that are going to be covered under the national logistics policy. And I do hope that the logistics policy, once it is finalized and announced, we are not waiting for initiating action on any of these things that I mentioned. In many areas, we have initiated action. We are at different stages of its implementation. Because whatever I said, I think are non-contentious. They are absolutely, anyone who would talk about logistics would say the same thing. And I would end by saying that while in many other domains, many other sectors, you can find reference points. You can see that, all right, other countries have developed some such policy and you can just look at it and copy and paste it in some sense. But in the logistics space, this space is so country specific. Looking at experiences of other countries and copying those examples to Indian context becomes extremely difficult. First and foremost, such comprehensive integrated logistic policies in other countries do not exist. In several countries, there is a unified or single transport ministry. And if you have one transport ministry, at least, you don't have to bother too much about that. So one agency and coordination arrangements become less important. So therefore, in India, we had to devise our own, formulation for the national logistics policy, and therefore it has taken a little more longer than what it should have taken. But I can assure you that we have reached a finality on this, and I think you will soon see the final logistics policy in place for the nation. And with that, we will have a very robust framework for action to work on improvements in the logistics and supply chain management for the nation. And with that, I do hope that India would conquer the last frontier of management, as Peter Drucker said. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity, and and thank you for accommodating the time. Thank you.
Vineetji, would you like to comment?
Thank you, sir. I think it's very enlightening to see this NLP, National Logistics Policy, that has been made with due consultation from all stakeholders. It's actually quite interesting and very, very well thought of, because when many of us looked at it and we tried to pick holes in it and say, "Acha, ye to government ne nahi kiya hai, ye add kare," and we could really find a lot of things. So it is definitely very well thought of. And of course, with any new beginning and new initiatives, there will be a process where things will start improving, or with time, those things will change. So I think we are very hopeful to look at this policy in implementation. We have a huge number of MSMEs that are part of our organization, sir. And I would like to ask you one or two questions related to that. We have 4.5 lakh members from various MSME sectors. And what is really happening to make the supply chains of these MSME companies more in line with the ease of doing business? So ultimately, this is the base that really supports the whole growth engine of our country. So, sir, what are the things like, at local level, they face a lot of issues when it comes to logistics, or when they have to send material, as you rightly said, about documentation, um, and then they do not get the right kind of supply chain financing. So where should they be thinking about changes in how to manage their logistics and supply chain, sir?
Thank you, Vineet. I think it is a very good question. First, let me reflect on what you mentioned about the national logistics policy. Obviously, any such document cannot be, you can always find, faults with it. You can plug loopholes in any document. But the whole idea of any policy is to provide some kind of a coherent framework for action. Many of these things, are mostly about doing. Most of the policy is as good as its implementation. So I think a lot of things get covered at the implementation stage, at the time when subsequent subsidiary set of documents are released. For instance, under the policy, while we are talking in generality about what we need to be doing on warehousing, but on warehousing there shall be another guidance document on warehousing development in the country. How do we bring coordination at the state level? While we are generally making some reference to it, a more detailed outline of what states could do and could not do around logistics coordination and provide services to particularly farmers and MSME sector will come on those detailed documents. So that is what I wanted to say, that everything cannot and should not be covered in a policy document. It is about bringing everyone on the same page, and that is the purpose it serves. Now, as far as the MSME sector is concerned, it is a very important sector for the economy. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Most of the benefits in terms of simplification, digitization, streamlining of processes, the MSME sector will be the biggest beneficiary, because as far as the big industry is concerned, they can navigate through those processes with the help of consultants, with the help of their highly qualified staff. MSMEs do not have that. So unless you simplify those processes, which are so simple that small businesses can handle them by themselves, they face difficulties. So those issues are obviously something that MSME will definitely like. But more importantly, I think because MSMEs have small cargo to handle, and I think efficiencies come in when you aggregate cargo and move it together, or efficiencies come in when you do not have a lot of empty haulage of carriers in return trips. So those things will definitely, and there is a special focus on some of these areas by using technology, by using better coordination, by working with GSTN and other ministries and departments. So I think all this will immensely help the MSME sector to reduce their logistic cost and to address many of the current challenges in logistics and supply chain that they are currently facing.
Thank you, sir. Deepak?
Thank you very much, Pavanji. This is really very informative. I think the logistics, like I said, is an enabler, and it's easy when you have one ministry, and it is very, very tough. And it's not so. It's really, really tough that you're trying to put this whole thing together. And I'm sure the entire industry is going to be with you. Obviously, nobody can paint the whole thing with one brush, and never will be a perfect solution. We learn as we go, and while we leap, we will think, and we'll keep course correct as well. So we all with you, sir. Thank you so much for this. May I now invite Mr. Sanjay Rath from JSW to please share his.
So, Mr. Sood, I'll be here with you as long as I can, and then I will quietly, log off because I have to join another meeting. Okay, but
No
I'll
problem,
try
sir.
to be there with you as long as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this, sir. We really, really appreciate that you accommodated our request this afternoon, and we're very delighted and happy that you are making all the effort to stay with us as long as possible. Thank you so much. Sanjay ji, over to you, and we will obviously send the presentations to your officer should you have to leave before.
Thank you, Mr. Deepak, and thanks, Mr. Pawan Kumar Agrawal ji, for being a part of this webinar. And good afternoon to all distinguished delegates, and also all those ladies and gentlemen who are part of this webinar, participated in this webinar. So I think after hearing Mr. what insightfulness what Mr. Agrawal and Mr. Vineet and Mr. Deepak also has shared. So I thought, being a user industry which is very, very logistic intensive, so I thought that we can probably share some of our experience during this pandemic that had. So this COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way the business environment works in our countries or in our organization. And some of the issues which becomes more pertinent during this period is that the ability to react, change, adapt, and the crisis management. So I will tell you a simple experience that JSW has undergone. And when this pandemic situation happened during later part of March, so suddenly we found that everything comes to a standstill. The plants are operating. We got, being a what do you call that, critical operation. So we got the necessary approval from the government, but the entire logistic came to a standstill. So all the trucks are held up in the en route, so they cannot reach us. The only thing that was reaching us is railways. That too also with a lot of restrictions and these things. And even though we were able to move materials by rail, but there is nobody to unload and load the materials. So that was the kind of situation. The entire supply chain, basically steel, for every ton of steel that we manufacture, we need almost 4 times of that of materials to come in and go out. So when this sort of situation happened, so it made us to think that how do we perform? So for few weeks, virtually we have to think of scaling down our production. So gradually we started bringing down our production level and all that. At some point of time we thought that if this situation continues for 1 or 2 more weeks, then probably we have to shut down the entire plant. But then quickly we started doing the engineering. We started looking at all the other options, that what are the other things that we can do, what is the other mobilization that we can do. Fortunately, the government supported us in giving a lot of relaxation when it comes to multimodal cargo movement. So we could quickly move from road to rail. While road long distance were becoming difficult, but short distance we could manage. So with a lot of engineering and this thing that we could do, and we were happy that within a period of 1 month we could bounce back, and we could come back to a level of something like 75 to 85% of our production. And then today, currently, we are almost at close to about 100%, or almost close to what we used to be in pre-COVID time. So that is something, of course, forced us to realize that while we could do some management under crisis sort of situations without looking at the cost of logistics, but then on a long-term solution, this will not survive. So we quickly, started reorganizing our logistic framework and started looking at what are the other things that we could do. And there I would say that the digital transformation helped us a lot. So a lot of work where we used to depend more on the manpower that we could automate. We could design special steel carrying wagons, which doesn't require any manual handling, doesn't require any, it's a total mechanized kind of a systems which can be operated digitally. And we got these wagons developed, manufactured in-house in India, and we'll be deploying them. So thereby a lot of activities which we otherwise currently doing it, will not be doing it. So this pandemic actually taught us a lot of innovation that we can bring in supply chain logistics. And I'm very happy, Honorable Mr. Agrawal, that the national logistic policy is coming, so we can also give lot of feedbacks. And I think many activities have been covered under that, what I understand. But then there are two aspects which I thought is very pertinent. So which we should be a part of this. One is the innovation. Because today currently there are a lot of innovative way of transportation of materials are available. And some of them we have already implemented, like for example, pipe conveyor, which reduced your cost by almost 1/4, and then the slurry pipeline sort of a concept which can carry certain solid things, which can reduce your logistic cost by almost 1/5. Then the thing is to come the coastal. This is the least explored option, the coastal multimodal cargo option. So currently we are happy that we are moving close to about 35 million ton of cargo through coastal movement. Almost all our iron ore, coal, and all these fluxes are moving through coastal. So while that is happening for the bulk, but for the finished goods, the penetration is not much. We are able to do only 2 to 3%, just because of various the infrastructural issues and the cargo size and all that. So there are a lot of things that we need to do, because if you look at China or all other countries which have such a vast coastline, India in fact has 7,500 kilometers of coastline. Almost entire place can be covered. 3/4 of our population we can cover through coastal, but still the penetration is hardly 6 to 7%, as against Japan or other European countries, or in China it is close to about 40-45%. So that is one of the reasons why our logistic cost per GDP is very high. We are close to about 14.5, whereas other countries are in 7-8 sort of a level. So that is one of the reasons that we are not able to explore our logistic this thing through coastal. So there is a lot of need to be done. And although there is Sagarmala and all those projects, we are also party to those projects. But I think we are still not looking at how productive or because there's a lot of investment that needs to be done, and I think the government do have good plans, but then the implementation is the key. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do while it is coming to the innovation part, and many other initiatives which we could do. I think apart from the digital transformation part, we are doing is basically we are trying to integrate all our SMEs with those kind of learning, because that learning has to flow. So Ajay, as Mr. Agrawal was rightly telling that the big companies has the innovation, has the technology, has the money to spend on those areas, and we would like to give that kind of those benefits to the SME. And end of the day, they are the part of our supply chain. So obviously, if they improve their supply chain, it will adds value to mine. So obviously, will be more interested to ensure that all our SMEs gets the similar benefits of whatever the innovation that we do in logistic, in digital transformations. So my request is that in the past we have been working very closely with the logistic and the Ministry of Commerce in formulating many there are many old laws and documentation process and verification process. So those things are not required for the present context. Those things can be digitalized. Those things can, because currently those sort of laws and these things, some of them we have already shared with your team. When it comes to coastal cargo, the kind of regulations that are there, they're quite age-old sort of regulations, and so those things can be removed. Though there are a lot of presentation from outside also for removing those sort of legislation and regulatory requirements. Because at the end of the day, we can, I understand the safety is very important, but at the same time, we'll have to ensure that those are not creating any kind of a bottleneck when it comes to coastal transportation is concerned, because currently though we have been the largest in India to move the coastal cargo, but then the time required to sort of transport these metals are very high because of various rules, regulation that we need to undergo, and also the time that it takes, in the transshipment and all that, and all those documentation works. So those things can be simplified and digitalized, thereby improve the efficiency. So I think overall it's a very good interaction. I thanks ASSOCHAM for bringing out such a useful webinar with a lot of insightfulness in respect to what is going to happen, and thanks for the inviting JSW and myself to be part of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. I think, like it is said, the practitioner helps us understand more as to what are the gaps, and therefore this continuous dialogue is something which is very important. And ASSOCHAM with its members tries and does this with the government all the time, and we're very happy Pawan ji has taken due cognizance to all the inputs and facts that have been laid down by all members of ASSOCHAM, and therefore something which is going to come out is going to be definitely which the industry has had a view on and a perspective on. So Vinit, would you have a comment or before that, or I would like to invite Anshu?
Just a thought, Sanjay ji, a question. The metals industry really, for them, cost is very important, because I do not know what is the studies recently in terms of the cost of logistics for you as an organization, or rather for the metals sector as a whole. And how do you think, maybe if it's one thing that you think, you've given a lot of suggestions, but one thing that will really help to drive it down over time, obviously nothing can happen overnight. So what is the cost of logistics for the metal sector, and what is one thing that can help to drive costs down over the next few years?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, Vinayji. The logistic cost per se for a steel industry is very, very extensive. As I said that, we are very intensive in logistic. For every ton of steel that we manufacture, we have to bring in 3 tons of raw materials. So that means it's 1:4 is a kind of this thing. So obviously your logistic cost will be roughly close to about 20-25% of your total cost. So that's a huge cost because of the quantity of material that you are moving for every ton of steel that you are manufacturing. So that's why I said that the steel industries are very, very logistic intensive in nature. So the entire focus for the steel industry to be competitive is supply chain only. So how efficient you make your supply chain, that is what you will directly contribute to your bottom line, and that's exactly what you will do the profit, because everything else is the same for all. They will all have efficient machineries to produce, manufacture, but it is only the supply chain efficiency that brings you. For example, let's say today, while JSW or these steel companies in India will be close to about 20% of their cost. Countries like China has 12%. So that means they have 8% advantage when it comes to this thing. So it's all the scale of operation that they do. Smaller steel plant will have higher expenses, whereas bigger steel plant can bring on bigger vessels for bringing the raw material. They can. So there's a lot of innovation that goes in. For example, if we are trying to put a slurry pipeline to reduce our logistic cost by almost 1/5, so then that straight away contributes to your bottom line. So that is how the logistic is very important for steel industry, because that is where the profits are. So and as you rightly mentioned that the entire focus of almost all steel companies are how to reduce the logistic cost, and thereby what sort of innovations that you can bring in, what sort of best-in-class practice that you can adopt, and how you can scale up the kind of operation. That's the reason why you see most of the steel plant who are very cost-effective are the largest steel plant. The more they increase the size of the volume of the cargo and all, they reduce the logistic cost. So that is how the innovation and the best-in-class practices helps. So, and we have been doing that, all this digital transformation that we are doing. We are spending a lot of money on digital transformation. We are spending a lot of money on to increase the size of the scale, and we're designing a lot of coastal vessels. For example, we'll be deploying close to about 28,000 tonner MBC mini bulk carrier to carry our coastal cargo, which are very specifically designed for quick discharging and loading. So, and they're very efficiently operatable. They operate on they can operate on LPG or CNG gases, thereby they reduce the fuel cost. So there are, and then as I said, the pipe conveyor, the slurry pipeline. So these are the areas where JSW has been working very hard to see that how to reduce the logistic cost so that we can be competitive globally. So that's exactly what is the need of the hour.
So I'm not sure if lost Vineet ji. I can see him there. Okay, good. So thank you, Sanjay ji. You give me a number of 25 and you give me a number of 8. So I get a little intrigued when I hear such diversity, that we are talking about JSW, possibly the largest and the most cost-effective steel plant that India has, and globally you are ranked very well. And I'm sure you're doing all that you can to bring it down to 24 and 23 and 22. But tell me, how is this magic of 25 to 8 happening? What is it that we need to learn? What is it that China does, which is
No, see, China, of course, the game is a bit different, which we, because as a country, they have a very sort of a friendly environment, being a capitalist country. So there are many laws, and most of the best advantage they get is that they are almost all the steel plant in China is state-owned. So being state-owned has their own advantage in terms of getting low-cost funding, and then doing the expansions. Because tomorrow, if the plant in China is the state-owned company, for him getting the cheaper money is not an issue. But the same is not the case in India. So that is, I think, is one of the.
So I'm sorry, I'm interjecting here. So what I'm trying to understand here, is it a logistical thing, or is something else that is helping? So you've answered clearly that it's not the.
For example, no, that's what exactly I'm saying. That for them, since funding is very low, so they can sort of scale up very fast. What they have done is that whatever logistic, for example, today, if I am bringing the material in a smaller vessel, let's say it's about 50,000 ton, they can afford to bring much bigger vessels of close to about Velemax, which can bring up to 3 lakh ton of cargo. So thereby, their shipping cost will become almost 1.5 times of, almost half of mine. So that sort of scale of operation they can do because they have capital. But today, if I have to spend money on logistics, so it is not there. Plus, the infrastructure that China has for all those things is quite. It's a world class kind of infrastructure which they are able to build. Whereas India, we are still struggling. There are a lot of multi-modal. India is not coastal friendly. For example, today, if I have to bring a coastal cargo to a port, the port charges are as high as the international cargoes, and then the transshipment cost, and then you have all those labor issue and all that. But in China, it's not so. So you can build your own jetty, you can bring material to your own. These things, jetties are again owned by the private companies, can give you at a very cheaper rate. So those sort of advantage you have there. They have created ecosystems of good infrastructure plus the regulation, the laws. So that is how they have brought down their costs. So most of the materials in China, if you see, all the big cargoes are moving by vessels. They are not in road. So in India, of course, the entire thing is on road. So everything is moving on road or rail, and there were a lot of congestions. Today, the average speed of rail, for example, in India is only 20. I think it's less than 25 kilometers per hour. So whereas in China it is as high as 86 to 90 kilometers per hour. So they're 3 times more faster. That means their transit time is 3 times more efficient than mine. So thereby you can understand the kind of So those are the benefits that they are. And that is why they are more efficient.
Sure. Thank you so much. So Vineet, we lost you for a while. I'm sure we lost the video, not the sound. So, and if you're okay with that, so I will now get Anshuman to talk to us. Anshuman Sinha, he's a partner at ET Gurney. So Anshuman, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Deepak. I hope you can hear me. And if I can request just to pass on the presentation control, I just want to walk through a few. Yes, thank you. So I hope you can see the document.
There may be
Not
a
yet.
lag, not yet.
Yeah.
Anshuman, if you're having a bandwidth issue, you may want to turn off your camera because your image is coming very hazy.
Can you see the document now?
Yes.
We can.
You want to go on a presentation mode, please?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, great, thank you. So what I wanted to do was, I've had the privilege of, we've been talking about national logistics policy for the last hour or so, very enriching discussions. And I do want to take a little, let's say, a slightly distant view, so that of maybe an advisor. We also looked at this, try to understand what does this policy entail. And as Vineet rightly pointed out, I think it's a very well-framed policy in terms of the objectives it wants to achieve and the sort of guidelines it has laid out for itself. And what we just wanted to do was to say that we feel that there are perhaps some area where a review can help in enriching this even further. It is already 90-95% there. A couple of steps here or there can help. And at least, and as I think Pawanji also rightly pointed out, policy is only as good as the instruments it has to implement it, right? So what is therefore the best mechanism that DOC can perhaps, or they have at their disposal to drive these for implementation. So I think as many of the call would be intimately familiar with, this is it lays down a clear vision for transformation of India's sectors with very clearly defined 5 objectives around integrated services, multimodal infrastructure, need for core international competitiveness, we spoke about in the context of RISE, and also logistics for emergencies. And against each of the 5 elements, there are reasonably well laid out, I would say, initiatives or what needs to be pursued. So for instance, a coordination mechanism, a master planning objective, development of modern warehousing and logistics parks, which again, we spoke of a few minutes back, standardization, we spoke of that. So a lot of these aspects are I would say, very well articulated in each of the 5 buckets. They also there's also an interplay. So helping integrated logistics services also helps, or the policy framework for that also helps in a framework that can help develop multimodal logistics parks, for instance. Or developing a robust regime for core sectors, in turn also helps us in developing the international competitiveness aspect. So there's very nice synergistic interplays that can arise out of each of these 5. What we felt was looking at the policy at again, like I said, completely outside lens. At least we felt that I think the vision is very well articulated, vision objectives. Even the instruments or the vehicles that the ministry needs are present. However, as far as the stakeholders are concerned, in terms of who does what and who's the executioner and who's, let's say, the monitor, I mean, who does it and who monitors it, there we felt there could be a little bit of strengthening. Because so that it is not just about defining what we want to do, but also very clearly saying that this is the responsibility of this particular ministry or this particular agency or this advisory body, whoever they may be, and the command and control and the checker arrangement is of this sort. So that also means that there is a ownership that can be ascribed to some of the targets that have been defined or some of the initiatives that have been defined in the initiative. A few areas that I'll go into a bit, not necessarily to go into all these points, but for instance, we felt that I think integrated logistics services as a concept is great. And for instance, we talked about having a master plan for national level logistics or even state level logistics. We do feel that there are independent activities that are happening, primary example being a lot of joint ventures that, for instance, states have with Indian Railways, whether it is for passenger, whether it is for freight. And some of those need to be a part of the master plan. Else, again, we will miss bringing in as many people as we would like in the whole master planning objective. Similarly, while ULIP, and ULIP is also an example that Pawanji spoke of, while ULIP is an ambitious target, but again, we feel that logistics department can also take a role as the agency for disseminating the relevant data and analysis for different ministries. If I take a very simple example, although the data today rests with GSTIN, but the last 2 years of e-way bill data provides I would say, a fairly robust view of where the ODs are in this country, where the movements are happening, where there are loads or where there are, let's say, bits and pieces of extra amount of, let's say, congestion happening. So there's a lot of very rich analytics that can be pulled out of that database. And in fact, that can be of help to the industry, not just to any one individual. It can help in planning, it can help in asset selection, it can even help in choosing a different mode altogether if we feel that that's the right mechanism. And all of this information honestly sits with the government of India, which is, and it can, and Department of Logistics is can be the central agency of coordinating collation as well as dissemination. So we feel that that's one area that can, in fact, where it's not just the minds. I mean, all of us put our collective minds together, and it just helps us in bringing out some of those use cases that can really help even the logistics department further their initiatives. Similarly, in multimodal logistics infrastructure, adequate use of railways and railways being used for infrastructure is as much a matter of infrastructure as it is a matter of getting the right policies, promoting PFT, whether it is PFTs or whether it is goods sheds, what sort of a contracting mechanism that is needed, many of which can be collated and can be supported as part of this policy, since DOC will always have a higher view, or at least a more integrated view than what a railways or a Ministry of Roads may have. And coming to some of those issues around monitoring and evaluation, especially if we move more to multimodal logistics movement, what sort of a bill of lading needs to be in place, what sort of an insurance coverage needs to be in place, and who are the parties who needs to get involved. Some of these additions in the policy we felt can strengthen the remit of what we are trying to achieve, and also bring a little bit more specificity without being too prescriptive, right? So that's a fine balance that we need to have. We spoke about containerization quite a bit for both in the context of domestic cargo, but however, MOR is promoting dwarf containers to be moved on certain routes, and we feel that if that's a way forward, that MOR release is something that will drive some of the movement in this country. And of course, there's a deeper standardization even for road movement, so that again, it's not, the benefit is not half achieved. So some of these imperatives can, together with the policy, can just aim to strengthen it. Like I said, our own reading was that maybe 90-95% it's already there, and all of you have also articulated the same. Some specificities around what we do with the data, how we bring these independent stakeholders together, taking care of these ancillaries around insurance coverage, bill of lading. I think it just can make this a lot more powerful from a intent perspective. And lastly, how do we make this happen? So as Pawanji rightly pointed out, it's one of the toughest subjects to crack, and just having one department claim ownership is perhaps a bit too much to expect. So we feel that there are maybe three lenses of looking at this set of initiatives, and maybe the three lenses themselves define who does it and who monitors the objective. We feel that there are a set of initiatives which are completely owned by the logistics department alone, which is essentially the department defines the rules, the department defines the implementation mechanism, and the ownership is clearly attributable to the department itself. Things like development of ULIP, things like integration of consignment information for GST e-way bill, or conveyance information from Vahan databases. All of those can be perhaps designed and implemented by the department alone. Then there will be areas where there is a very sizable, let's say, ownership of different stakeholders, whether it is customs, whether it is the state departments, the landowning agencies in some of these states. So in these, we feel that the role should be in terms of very clearly defining the guidelines and standards. We spoke about this also a few minutes back. So which means, and again, we need to define what level of depth logistics department can go to. So one example would be MMLPs are an asset class which at least at that scale have not been developed in India. I mean, we have MMLPs, not at such large scale of operations as we see in the Western economies. So they will need a set of standards to be defined, a set of what qualifies as an MMLP, what sort of layouts, what sort of automation, what sort of structure, what sort of usage. So there are certain areas of helping define the guidelines alone, and then leave the implementation with the respective agency. And the third aspect is really just, I would say, a core for lack of a better word, a policeman kind of a role, where our job is to keep the program honest. So we are the program managers. We don't perhaps do it ourselves. Simple example is, NH8 widening, one of the biggest movers of logistics and one of the biggest drivers for some of the cost of logistics that we've also spoke about. So there is, while NHAI and MORTH may have an overall responsibility of executing, but a centralized program management can drive a little bit more honesty, drive a little bit more, let's say, level of importance to some of these programs. Similarly, if you talk about integrated checkposts at state borders, while the CTOs have now been done away with, but RTOs still sometimes stop vehicles for bridges or for DX, and that can. So while some of these activities become the responsibility of other people to do, but at a centralized basis, if those initiatives are program managed by by DOC, then there is a overall charter in place for what a logistics improvement program will look like. Otherwise, we are at a risk of doing, all of us are trying at our own levels. I mean, of course, the shippers are trying, the LSPs are trying at their own levels, and the policy making bodies are also trying. But we are just as always at a risk of doing it in a compartmentalized fashion. So we feel that this segregation of initiatives, although it's a reasonably simple segregation, but it can really help in defining who owns it, who does it, who monitors it, and then it is for us to stay true to, or stay honest to what we expect, or where we expect to be a year from now, and where we expect the overall as a sector, where do we? So we talked about where the World Bank index will be at, but some of these initiatives, if they are well defined, it just helps in putting a picture as to what it will look like a year from now. So I'll stop here in the interest of time, but I really just wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little about the policy and at least what some of those improvements, either on the design side or on the implementation plan side, can help in driving a much better reward for all of us in the next coming few years. Yeah, so I'll stop here. Back to you, Vinitji.
Vinitji, I would request you for your comments and wrap up, please.
Thank you. So Anshuman, can I ask you again, what I asked previously, one small thing that you think can be done that can be really can start that process of change that you are also envisioning?
Yeah, so I would say maybe I would probably link two specific initiatives which I feel can add value, a lot of value in the system. I think one, the ULIP itself, it's the development of that coordinated and I would say disseminated among the audience, that each of us can derive the right benefits from that sort of a portal. It's really in the works with, and I'm sure many of you are very intimately involved with that as well. And the other thing I would say is, I mean, we've struggled with developing a robust view of the nature of OD in this country. Freight moves from where to both road and rail. Rail has a great system because of the state of freight cargoes, but it's inside railways booking systems. Road did not have it, but thanks to GST, and it's at least recorded in the financial transaction information. So if that database, those can be, or either through APIs or, I mean, relevant, I would say privacy formats can be devised. But if that is laid open to developers, to startups, to help come out with some of the use cases, whether it is, let's say, real-time. I mean, Google Maps is a great example of real-time urban information availability. So whether it is congestion availability, whether it is, let's say, real-time status of assets, understanding what type of commodities are originating where and moving somewhere else, and are some of these taking extremely long routes than what they should have, because that can then point us to what we need to correct. If without data, we are all honestly guessing that these are the changes that need to happen. So I would say these are the two areas where the information is in place, the governance mechanism is in place, the ownership of the data is in place. Defining how to use it and who can use it can help in fast tracking some of these initiatives, which can then yield value to all of the users.
Thanks, Anshuman. Thank you. So we are at the cusp of the hour in terms of our closure. It was overall an excellent discussion, starting with the Special Secretary for Logistics. I think we got really good insights into the national logistics policy and some of the practical issues that they are facing today as well. I think we will definitely take up the idea of holding master classes in various subjects for all different stakeholders. Looks very interesting from our perspective as well as an organization. And again, thank you to both of you, Sanjay ji and Anshuman, for joining us today. It has been a great discussion, and we are hoping that we can keep up this momentum going forward. Final comments, Deepak ji?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's a great learning. I'm a user, not a person who runs the logistics, but I think I very clearly can see how important and how crucial this is, because any, like what Sanjay just said, that anything that you save in the cost of logistics is straight into your bottom line, and it eases up the money for you to invest further, grow further. Cost of money is high. Inventory in transit is something which is never light in a boardroom, and therefore any efficiency that is developed in that space is only going to lead us become more competitive as we go along. And one last point that I think Pavanji also made a mention of it, but I still feel cost of movement of goods between hinterland of India compared to the smaller countries like Vietnam or the others. So there will always be some products where the costs will be low, but if you're positioned wrong as a factory or as a product, and you are looking at it as an opportunity outside of India, so I think you will have to relocate to be more cost competitive. You can't be sitting at a location and say that I want to be sitting in this location and yet I want to be cost competitive. Not working like that. If you're going to move your inward and outward material from a point, not happening. So there is a lot of rethink that needs to go, not only on how the logistics happen, but also the way the business is conducted, so to say. So thank you very much, all of you, all delegates. I believe that we've had a couple of people who carried the cost for us. So thank you very much to those. Encourage more and more people to please come forward and do support activities at all chambers, including ASSOCHAM, because this is the time where all chambers need help. So thank you very much. Up and about. I make this comment to GSW specifically under this specific area. I'm sure you can consider support to organizations like us. So wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciated your physical presence and your time and sharing your story with us. I think happy days and better days are there for you in the steel industry. And Anshuman, thank you for being the partner for this knowledge report. That has Vinny, thank you to you as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Vinny. Thank you, Mr. Shur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anshuman.